Welcome to this video on something that has blown my mind in a way that almost nothing has blown my mind in terms of security over the last couple of years. Let's get started, and let's get started now. So, AppSec engineers, this week, I think more than a million of us have been working on something that has completely blown my mind. And of course, I'm talking about ChatGPT. Now, unless you are wondering what on earth is ChatGPT, so ChatGPT is essentially an AI chatbot that's been released by the OpenAI Foundation. And this is a supposedly successor to the very popular GPT-3. Basically, they're dubbing this GPT 3.5. Now, what does all this mean? What does GPT-3, what does 3.5 mean? I'll try to get into it. I'm not an AI expert. I think this is probably something that is addressed better by an AI expert, but anyway, let me talk about the limited knowledge I have in terms of what this is and how this is probably going to evolve. So basically, OpenAI Foundation is a foundation that comes up with these trained AI models called GPT-3. And GPT-3 was one of the first publicly accessible models that all of us could get access to. So that's why you saw a sudden burst of things like AI writing tools, summarization tools, image generation tools. You had so many different variations of these tools getting created because you had AI models available from OpenAI that you could use. So a lot of marketers started using marketing copy tools to generate automated AI-based marketing copy for these subjects and so on. Products like Jasper.ai, Copy.ai, it had a whole burst of products that came out from GPT-3. So that was GPT-3. But on December the 1st, OpenAI released something called ChatGPT, and that was really where I saw the potential for AI in literally anything. And of course, since my lens is security, especially with security, and I was completely blown away. So just for those of you who are not familiar, ChatGPT is this chatbot style interface that has been created by OpenAI. This is accessible to anyone. You create an account and start using ChatGPT. It is not restricted as of now. I don't know how long it's going to be kept unrestricted, but ChatGPT is something that allows you to ask interactive questions and come up. And the AI, which has been trained on a whole bunch of models that are very specific to a conversational style model, is going to respond to you and try and give you the answer to that question. Now, this is putting it mildly. Now, across the internet, if you've been on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, you would have probably seen people asking all kinds of random questions to ChatGPT. So things like, can you explain quantum mechanics in the style of Donald Trump? And it gave a pretty actually accurate and phenomenal answer that it came up with. Or can you explain what this is? Or can you teach me how to create a C program that does this? And ChatGPT just does this for you. It just gives you the answer. And from what I have seen, and I started using ChatGPT and almost immediately started asking security questions. Things like, hey, is this code vulnerable? Or generate some bash script for me that does something or whatever it is. I started using it almost immediately for security related use cases, and I was not disappointed. In fact, I just had it yesterday write a letter of engagement for a penetration test, and it did a pretty decent job of this kind of legal document, if you think about it. I'm not saying I'm not going to get it vetted properly, but even then, this was quite impressive the way it was able to actually respond in an instant and come up with these answers. So ChatGPT is something that I think is going to revolutionize security. Now, the first question that you would ask, is this going to affect people's careers? And the short answer to that is yes. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I will do a demo of ChatGPT. I'm going to look at a demo again from a security lens to try and give you a perspective of how it works. I highly encourage you to check this out. But before we get into the demo, will AI affect me in security or my security job? So let's say you are doing something in security. Maybe you're in AppSec, maybe you're in network security, maybe you're in cloud security, maybe you are in SOC, maybe you're in threat intelligence. Will ChatGPT or such AI-based tools affect my job? Will it affect my livelihood? Will I lose my job because these automated tools can just do this? And to a certain extent, I think, yes, it is possible that a lot of lower level jobs may not, while they may not be eliminated, certainly be downsized, because this is so powerful. It can handle things like
pretty accurate way. It's a lot more accurate than a lot of tools. So I think not just people, but a lot of tools might themselves go out of business. In fact, there is talk about the possibility that even Google as a search engine might just fall because ChatGPT is giving you such specific contextual answers that Google, with of course riddled with ads, and they can't really give you such amazing contextual answers. So the answer to that question, will I lose my job? I think it is possible in certain types of jobs. So if you're dealing with things like you're just doing something mundane or you're just doing something which is specific type of task, which now can be entirely, for instance, report writing or things like that. A lot of that can be done, I think, by AI. And I think GPT-4 is on the way and that's being trained on billions and billions of data sets. So I think there is a good chance that we will see pretty paradigm shifting way that our jobs will work. Having said that, I think people who are at a higher skill level in their job. So, for instance, if you are an expert cloud security engineer, or if you're an expert Kubernetes security engineer or DevSecOps engineer, I don't think that your job is at risk, at least at this point. Because the way I see it, all of these things need to take some time. And of course, there are the security concerns, the privacy concerns. It's not just that companies that have been so scared of even exposing their employees to the internet would suddenly be okay with an AI solving their problems. I don't see that happening immediately, but I do think a lot of lower level activity, not necessarily jobs, will be taken up by AI based tools or whatever it evolves to in the future. So I think that there is a little bit of that's going to happen, and I think a lot of tools themselves, I'm talking about SaaS tools, other tools, things like the report generation tools and all of that stuff, there might be a scenario where they might not see the kind of business they used to see. And I think that might happen as well. So for instance, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I just asked ChatGPT, hey, this is my code. What is the vulnerability you find? And it actually gave pretty accurate answer as to what the vulnerability was. And it was pretty accurate, except that in some cases, there were a few iterations that I had to do to get the right answer. But most of the time, I would say about 90% of the time, it gives you the right answer almost immediately, or the answer that is the most appropriate answer almost immediately. So I think there is immense value. And remember, this is just getting started. So as and when it's getting trained more and more, you will see a much larger imprint that it leaves on society in terms of the way you can just get answers for anything you want. I also think that it has a huge potential to be a companion product. If you're a developer, you want something fast, you can just ask ChatGPT, take it, integrate it into your solution. So I think that also is likely to happen. So it might just open up an entire opportunity for a whole bunch of people to get into the spaces they want to get into because of this. So I think there is going to be a little bit of both happening. I think there will be a little bit of job contraction or activity contraction, at least because of AI-based tools like this. And I think there will be some new opportunities that are opening up because end of the day, you still need somebody to integrate this into something or be able to probably have some kind of merge this into some existing project or something like that. So I think there you will still see a lot more activity getting generated. So with that, I'm going to start off with the demo part of this video. I'll show you some of the things that I've been doing with ChatGPT that I thought were pretty interesting and pretty accurate, having said that. So let's just do a demo session. This is basically the interface that you have with ChatGPT, and it's pretty much like a chatbot. So if you use chatbots, I don't think this is very different from that interface. But what really it can do is something that you will probably be not just surprised by, but probably shocked by to a certain extent. Let's talk about that. Let's start actually interacting with the AI and see how it works. So I'm going to just do some basic stuff, right? So I'm just going to ask a simple question. So let's say I want to write an AWS IAM policy for DynamoDB. And instead of writing the policy myself, I am going to ask ChatGPT to write an IAM policy for me. So generate an AWS IAM policy in JSON for that allows a Lambda function to access a DynamoDB table with the following operations. So this is get item and scan. So let's see whether it does a good job of generating this. If you see what I've asked it to do is pretty straightforward. And in fact, it's actually not straightforward. It's pretty complicated. So it's IAM policy that allows in JSON that allows a Lambda function. Of course, this is necessary because policy anyway does not have the role or something that will be attached to the Lambda function. So it's just a policy. So DynamoDB has a bunch of operations. We want a policy that just writes this. So this is damn cool because if you see, this is actually been generated as code that I can literally just copy paste into wherever I need to, and I'm done. I just need to replace these values. And this is very powerful because it is just given me a ready answer for what I need. It's just a ready answer for what I need. I don't need to worry about any of this stuff. I don't need to think about, oh, is this, it looks right. Of course, one of the things that I come across with ChatGPT is that you need to know the answer a little bit already before, or you need to be able to validate it independently because sometimes it does throw a few zingers at you in terms of maybe some inaccurate answers. But this, I know this for a fact that this is a pretty spot on answer, spot on based on the question that I've asked. So it's really good. And I think it's pretty powerful as to what it can do. So this can really make static analysis and things like that, or being able to generate more secure code, or of course, even insecure code, quite easy to do. So that is something that you'll see. Now, let's look at another example of this. One of the things that I've been working on is eBPF. So this is a more complicated thing, and this is taking it to the next level. So write eBPF code using Python's BCC library to be able to trace DNS requests. So eBPF is a kernel capability, and Python's BCC library allows you to interact with these eBPF programs, allows you to deploy these eBPF programs. I want an eBPF program that will be able to trace DNS requests. And this is not a simple, in fact, you don't even have a very good example of this in their own documentation. You don't have an example of this, not deep dive in their own box. So if it's able to generate this, is really powerful stuff. So this is okay. So it's already started. You can see that it's writing the eBPF code. It seems to be pretty accurate because you'll see that it's using the right DNS parameters here for the header, for the query, for all of that stuff. So remember, DNS request, DNS network packet is basically divided into a bunch of structures. So it's able to have the header, it has the flags on the header, it has the query as a struct, and it's able to pull that packet apart and be able to provide that as a trace. So you'll see that it's actually being traced, the ID flags, and of course, the query name, the query type. I gotta actually check this and run this, but I think this is pretty accurate. A UDP send message, which seems to be the right Linux call as well. So let's see. So if you see UDP send message, okay. So UDP send message, yeah, seems pretty legit. UDP send message seems like it is. Oh yeah, it is for debugging. So you'll see that UDP send message is the fires whenever a process sends a UDP message. Yeah, that's right. That's the actually right. So that's what we want to do. So as soon as a UDP message is sent out, so if you see if a process sends a UDP message, we want to be able to DNS trace it, and we want to be able to print it. This is pretty powerful stuff. You can see how life becomes so much easier for a lot of us. Again, for a lot of us for us, it's easy, but for a lot of people who are looking to get into their jobs, by doing things like this, it might not. A lot of this stuff might be taken away from society. So that's also a possibility that might happen. I don't know. I'm not a soothsayer. I don't know what's going to happen, but this is definitely, and it's a very powerful thing. It really has massive implications. So for another security use case, let's actually try some static analysis. So I have a Kubernetes manifest that I'm going to paste in here, and I'm going to ask the question. So I want to say, how could I improve the security of this Kubernetes manifest? Or let's make it a little bit more specific. How can I improve the security of this Kubernetes manifest? And I'm going to paste this. So you'll see that it has a whole bunch of, it's a pod, it's whatever. It has a bunch of things, right? It has a bunch of definitions. Now, so this is pretty cool. Now let's look at what it's generated. It is a bit generic, this answer, but it's actually pretty good because if you think about it, there are a few specific things as well. So using a trusted registry, yeah, Docker Hub, we're using Docker Hub. So that's a problem. So it says with a trusted registry, set resource limits. That's absolutely valid. Yeah, we don't have a network policy. Again, it clearly is not seen it. Yes, but yeah, I think that is a little bit on a generic side, but it's still pretty good. Yes, use secret management is good because we are loading this as a password somewhere, I think. Yeah, I think we're loading some kind of, not sure. Yeah, may not be. So that's not so necessarily accurate secret management, but that's fine. Role-based access control is too generic. It's a little too generic. But let's try this again and see what specifically it can do. Yeah, it's pretty much coming up with the same thing. This is, in fact, way more generic as well. So I think this is not that. Let's try it with some source code, right? Let's try it with some Python source code and see how it actually performs under those conditions. In fact, I'm going to give it some Python source code and we're going to see how it's going to actually respond to that. Okay, let's see. I'm going to take vulnerability in there somewhere. Let's see if I can find a decent vulnerability. Okay, let's look for this. So I have some Python code. Let's see whether it's actually been able to, let's look at this code. What the security vulnerabilities you find in this Python Flask? So let's see. So I have put in my Python Flask application and let's see what it does. Okay. So the first one, which is pretty much on the money immediately, is MD5 hash, which is the one that you have, right? It's MD5 hash. It's a problem storing the password. Authentication and authorization, which is true. Actually, we have not authenticated and or not authorized the application at all. There is no authentication on Flask that has been using it. It says SQL injection. Not really, but yeah, I don't think it's SQL injection. This is off base, but cross-site scripting, probably there is a potential for it because you're not doing any kind of validation. It's not CSRF. Again, give or take that if it's used purely as an API, not so much, but again, there's not much context to that. Application vulnerability injection attacks. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's possible. For more generic injection attacks like HTML and stuff like that, yes, it is because inputs can be used in HTML or anywhere else, and that is a problem. So, yes, it is pretty cool. So, if you think about it, the name and things like that, email, of course, is a little validated, but the name is still not very validated. Now let's try again. MD5 hash, authentication, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it says TinyDB. Oh, wow. This is pretty cool. Applications. Yeah, this is damn cool. This is really powerful stuff because I'm able to actually using a Flash development server. Yeah, which is true because yeah, I think I think yeah, we are using a Flask development server, which is fair, sanitizing input, which is great, not access, no access control, no logging. Wow, this. So you can see that it does what a static analysis tool does, and sometimes a lot better because it gives you some very interesting, not just quantitative or code specific examples, it also gives you things that you've not considered. So it was pretty interesting that it was able to do this. TinyDB, it's true. It's an in-memory database, the data is lost. And of course, that was the intention of this, just an example. That's fine. Any form of access control logging. This is actually an architecture review finding. You would not find this in SAST because SAST is only looking for things in its rule base. This is actually being trained. Since it's a trained AI, it's clearly looking at it based on whatever it learns. So it's pretty much mimicking human behavior. I'm not saying exactly, I don't know to the extent that don't quote me on how much it is mimicking human behavior, but there is a certain amount of mimicking that is happening as well. So this is a really powerful and super interesting use cases that you can do with this, right? For my last demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have ChatGPT write an executive summary for a pen test report. So let's see what it does. So I'm going to keep it a little complicated. I'm going to say, write an executive summary report for a pen test where there was 3 CVSS score 9 findings and 2 CVSS score 4 findings. So I'm not just going to say that, hey, these are high severity, these are medium severity or low severity work. Let's see what it does. Let's see what it does. Wow, this is pretty interesting because first of all, it has clearly identified 3 as critical and 2 remaining with medium risk because of the CVS score. That itself is pretty impressive. These, yeah, this is a little bit generic. Of course, it's not a big deal, but this, of course, it's tried to get into some kind of flight of fancy. But I am impressed with the concise way it is expressed this particular thing. It's a pretty It's an okay executive summary, but definitely an interesting approach. Let's try this again and see whether it generates something more interesting. Wow, it actually just comes up with vulnerabilities. It just says, yeah, I have these problems, which is actually okay because you can always change this out. It's just 60% of the way there, 60, 70% of the way there, simply because you don't have to write this anymore. So you have clearly three, which is a critical level of risk, and two, which is a moderate level of risk, which is actually so you can see that a lot of the activities that we used to spend a lot of time on, they have potential of being completely disrupted. And with that, some of these jobs that used to take up this kind of activity might also be disrupted because of this. But I, for one, I'm super impressed with what this product has achieved. And I think I'm really looking forward to what it can do for all of us in days to come, especially for us in security, because I think this can really be super powerful in the way it evolves. And let's see whether all of us have a job at the end of all of this. So this is a very interesting approach that I'm seeing with ChatGPT. I hope you find it useful. Check it out yourself. ChatGPT is available for anyone to just use. So you don't have to have any kind of a paid account or anything like that. There are a few content policies that you have to think about when you use it. You can't, when you try and ask questions about how do I attack this or something like that, it does throw a content policy violation. But for the most part, you should be able to get answers for whatever you want in the world. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. As always, please and like this video, share it with your friends, and do subscribe to our AppSec Engineer YouTube channel for more such interesting content. Thank you very much.